Harma's morning, and one wonders, pre-GST you had those sales going on, so people were buying cars. Post-GST again, people are buying cars. I mean, where is Maruti getting those kind of numbers from?
Yeah, I mean, it is something which actually defies belief, because it's now really crossed 50%, 51% if you take passenger cars. I think Maruti's strategy is something which has become a kind of a textbook. It's not just products they're focusing on the whole new back end. I think recently you've seen certain rollouts, they're revamping their dealerships, they're building a used car platform, True Value, they've revamped that completely. So I think they've realized that network really is the key to success in India, and that's what I think a lot of the other players haven't really focused enough on.
Is there anyone who's even coming closer or attempting to beat Maruti in the past?
Well, I think there's only Hyundai, which is over there, and Honda to a certain extent. But I think otherwise, Maruti seems to have the legs on everyone. And it's really quite amazing, because in terms of product, there are really some other fantastic products out there. But I think Maruti's success, as I said, is purely because of the whole customer centricity, which is nailed better than anyone else.
But Maruti is growing in a market which otherwise has been a tough market. 12, 13 players till about 4 or 5 years ago. Now a couple of them, they've turned their back to India. But Maruti is growing in a market and gaining market share in a very tough market. There would be a sweet spot and there would be a tough spot.
Well, let me put it this way. I think it's Maruti that's made the market tough. They've kind of dominated this. Yeah. They've hung on to their lead, and it's really very difficult to topple them, because they're not standing still. They're just, going ahead. So when you say it's a tough market, I think it's because Maruti's made it tough. And if you look at it, you've got one manufacturer that's locked out half the market and leaving everyone else to scrap for the balance of it. And if you look at the top few players, except Maruti and Hyundai, which are in double-digit in terms of percentage, everyone just has fragments and crumbs of the market. So a lot of opportunity for them, but I don't think they're getting their act together in the sense that, they need to focus on network. That's really what's going to finally give them long-term sustainable numbers in India.
Would you say Tata Motors has failed miserably in that attempt? Because the new cars haven't taken off. I remember about 9 months back, we were chatting about as to how Tata Motors and the new Nexa, etc. will try to at least take on the market, but that sort of failed.
Well, I think Tata Motors, if you've seen, they've launched 4 products, in the space of almost 18 months, never been done before by Tata Motors. So really hats off to the product development team, but you're absolutely right. They should be doing better numbers, and again, I think it's down to the network. Tata Motors really needs to focus on its network. It's not the products anymore. Even this new Nexon which we've driven, it's a terrific product. Okay, it's got a few rough edges, but that'll be smoothened out along the way. But it's how these cars are sold. That really is going to be the challenge for Tata Motors. And I think the network itself, they're talking to a new kind of customer they've not experienced before, because they've got no history of dealing with these sort of customers. They're trying to pull from other brands. So I think really for me, Tata Motors' biggest challenge right now is get the network fixed, and that's when they'll see better sales.
Yeah, I mean, in a city like Bombay, you see Jags, but you don't see the indigenous Tata cars ever on the road. At least I haven't.
I mean, if you're a customer of Tata Motors, the last Tata Motor car I had was Indiga, and I've really, migrated. I've never ever been a Tata Motor customer after that.
Well, to be honest, I think that's the perception right now, which they're trying to change. Obviously, the cars have moved on a lot from there, and as I said, I drove the Nexon, and to be honest, I was quite blown away by how well conceived it is. It looks fantastic, it drives well, the steering is one of the best I've experienced. It's comfortable inside, so they really nailed it as far as product concept goes. But I think now the next step is to sell it, and I think that's where they really need to deliver. And I think Nexon, is going to be a real telling point for Tata Motors, because also with the Nexon rides a lot of profitability for the PV division. I don't think any of the other products really make big money, but Nexon has juicy margins built into it. So, Nexon sales will also impact the bottom line for the PV business, which, as we know, is really bleeding.
A couple of years ago, we saw what could be called as the urban SUV fad. There was Duster, there was Ford EcoSport. There was a lot of competition suddenly for Mahindras, and Mahindras lost a lot of market share. How's that category doing?
Well, I think SUVs are the flavor of the month. They've been victimized also because
after Tuesday's rains, you better have an SUV.
Exactly, yeah. So that's right. So I think that debate has been settled once and for all. Should you buy a car or an SUV? But again, there are people. How do I say? SUVs have been taxed also globally. They're seen as the bad guys, which really isn't the case because SUVs now have become more car-like. They are compact, they are light, they're fuel efficient as well. They ride high, which is a big advantage. So I think this SUV fad will continue, but it all depends on you know, the taxation
How much
policy
more
as
for
well.
the RE fad to go? Because every time I look at RE dispatch number, that's Royal Enfield, I wonder, this is an old product, nothing new about the platform, just packaging, little bit of aspiration, a lot of inspiration, but the dispatch numbers are fantastic. 25-30% on a monthly basis. The category itself is doubling in 2.5 years.
Well, I think to me, Royal Enfield is what you call a real marketing phenomenon. It's a marketing success like no other. Because honestly, the products are quite basic. They're not even very reliable. We keep getting customer complaints about them. So, but people aren't buying into, it's not a commuter bike. They're buying into an emotion. They're buying into a community. They're buying into a lifestyle. And when that's the priority, really the product kind of isn't, it kind of plays second fiddle to all that. So people tend to excuse any product deficiencies in that. But really, it's a great marketing success, and it just goes to show that, you know, the biking community is quite nascent over here. But obviously, people want to, you know, be a part of it, and it's really more to do with lifestyle than pure transportation.
So what's next in store for Indian PV segment, considering that's the largest share and dominant one at that? Would it be the Teslas of the world? Would it be driverless cars? Or would you say that we are a decade away from that
No,
stage?
I think this whole thing on driverless cars, that's really, I drove a driverless Celerio as a proof of concept, which was quite freaky actually, and in Calcutta.
But you're safe and sound, so...
Well, it wasn't on an open road, it was in a kind of restricted area in an industrial park. But having said that, it's really a long, long way away. I think the next big thing is electric, which everyone's talking about. Now, you know, Piyush Goyal has made a statement that we should go electric by 2030. I'm not sure whether that's his statement or the government statement, because clearly 2030 we will not be ready. I mean, countries in Europe are talking about 2040. So, you know, we just don't have the infrastructure. But I think to go to electric, I think what we need to do is really build an ecosystem first, and that's why I'm a little, you know, stumped by the decision not to promote hybrids, especially plug-in hybrids, because plug-in hybrids need charging infrastructure, and yet they can manage on their own without it. So that's really a good bridge in between, you know, conventional engines and full electric, because if you have plug-in hybrids, you will automatically start developing an infrastructure, a charging infrastructure, which I think is the biggest.
Who has the capacity right now to make this? Only M&M?
Well, plug-in hybrids, no, I don't think M&M even makes regular hybrids. They make these electric cars, so it'll be some manufacturers globally, Toyota, Honda, they're very strong in hybrids, especially Toyota. I think Toyota's done a great job, especially with the Camry. It's kind of, you know, made people accept hybrids more and more. So, in fact, 90% of Camry sales were all hybrid, which is fantastic. It just shows the acceptance of that.
It's beautiful. I mean, Toyota globally has managed to achieve it. Actually.
Exactly, and now they've been, you know, they've got this whammy of a kind of a GST bin, which goes against them, and it doesn't make sense to have hybrids and let's say diesel cars having the same rate of GST.
Can I say the SUV consumer is not going to be perturbed because of this new GST cess, because he's buying an SUV because he wants to experience an SUV. And you know, if his EMI goes higher by 5,000 or 6,000 rupees per month, that's not going to be a restricting factor for someone who is an aspirational SUV buyer.
Well, there is some price elasticity there, but of course, at the end of it, I mean, it's going to be too expensive. He's going to think twice and say, should I just buy a regular sedan? So I think price will play a role, but I think if it's not too much, yes, people aspire to own an SUV much more than a car these days, generally in terms of just the image and the practicality, and we just saw it during the floods. I've been talking to some of the workshops. It's mainly cars which have come in because water has gone into the engine.
There were two BMWs, the swanky ones,
including a Maserati.
Well, I think it's important to know that all the German luxury sedans, they're the worst hit, especially BMWs, even Mercedes and Audis, because the way they are designed, they have the air intake very low down, because from a performance and efficiency point of view, it makes the most sense to have your intake low down, because that's where the air is coolest and that affects the engine the best, but that's where water gets in really easily. So I mean, if you have these cars, you just cannot drive them in
the technology which we use as children, Safed Hathi, white elephant. You know, sometimes some of these cars on a Bombay road, they end up becoming white elephant.
Well, definitely in the monsoon. In the monsoon, these cars have a serious problem of water ingestion into the engine, and which means your engine goes. They have a term for it also called hydrostatic lock, because water's gone into the engine, and water can't be compressed the way air can. So I think that's the engine just goes, and they have an insurance for it also, an insurance against hydrostatic lock, because it's such a big problem.
Okay, so closing comments from you. When we discuss the success story of Maruti and Eicher, these are great standalone examples. But in stock market, money is not made by betting on yesterday's growth. You have to identify the next future trend. If someone identified the RE cult in 2010, I mean, trust me, you don't need to watch stock market channels now, because Eicher has been a multi-bagger. Maruti has been a multi-bagger. What to your mind could be the next big trend in the automotive sector?
Well, I think clearly the next big trend is going to be to alternative powertrains, for sure. Now,
alternative powertrains?
Powertrains, yeah.
Okay.
What I mean is electrification, whether it's hybrids, whether it's engines becoming more efficient. You know, we're moving to a BS6 norm. We're moving to a very stringent norm on emissions. That's really going to have a huge impact on powertrains. That's going to have a huge impact on products, and it's going to kind of impact the people who have that technology or don't have that technology. And to be honest, I think Maruti here could be vulnerable, because moving forward, they don't have the technology of electrification, they don't have the technology of alternate powertrains as much as the others do.
Who's best positioned?
Well, I think a company like Toyota is very good, and it leads me to think at some point there will be a Toyota Maruti kind of you know, alliance.
Collaboration.
Yes,
yeah.
that will happen maybe 2023, something like that. There's even talk of the next generation Swift, not this one, but maybe the next one being a common platform. Because at the end of the day, Toyota knows the only way it can get into India is with Maruti, where they have a strong alliance. And I think Suzuki himself, Osamu Suzuki, does realize that, you know, he can't stay independent for very long. I mean, he's a hero for me. He's just amazing how, you know, it's like David and Goliath, the way he's just fought everyone, including Volkswagen. And, you know, and that partnership broke up and Suzuki came out the better of it. So I think long term, it's going to be the people who have this deep technology which are going to be the winners, because this technology is going to come, and it's going to come very fast.
Okay, Hormaz, always enlightening talking to him, you know, talking about cars. It's always a fascinating discussion. Good chatting with you as always.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.